The homeless man wants to buy the cheapest boxed meal. But when paying, he finds he is short by 90 cents. He begs the owner to charge a little less. But the owner does not hesitate at all. He would rather throw the prepared food into the sink then sell it cheaply to the homeless man in front of him. That's just great. Don't come back. Okay. Don't think about staying here. Get out. Okay, I will leave. Thank you very much. With no other options, perhaps it was a stroke of luck. It kept him from... In fact, James had a happy and fulfilling family in his childhood. But ever since his parents divorced, he gradually fell into depravity in his youth. He even became addicted to drugs because of it. Facing his parents' disgusted looks, penniless, he eventually ended up wandering and singing on the streets. In this cold and indifferent society, no one would give him the most basic respect. Coupled with the label of the drug addict, James couldn't even find a decent job. Past mistakes were like heavy shackles, trapping him in a haze of life, unable to break free. But one day, while James was taking a bath in the shelter, a faint noise suddenly came from outside the door. He was startled and jumped up, thinking a thief had broken into the house. He gripped a shoe tightly as a weapon and followed the sound step by step into the kitchen. When he saw this uninvited guest clearly, his tense nerves finally relaxed. It turned out to be a little cat that had run in to look for food. And the noise he heard earlier must have been it knocking over the cereal box. However, James was not angry, because this hungry little cat made him see himself curled up by the trash can, just as lonely and just as unloved. James poured out the remaining milk without hesitation. At this moment, he wasn't just feeding a cat. He was feeding that version of himself that longed to be treated with kindness. But looking at how it wasn't afraid of people at all, James said, but that's fine too. At least it's not a loner like me. Surely there is family worried about you. You should go home now. After the kitten was full, James tried to let it out through the window. But the cat clung to the window and refused to leave. And it looked at him with eyes, as if it were saying, I want to stay. Perhaps it was the longing for a bit of warm companionship. Or perhaps he understood the cat's plea. James finally allowed it to stay for the time being. All right. Just for one night, okay? Then I will take you back to your owner. Looking at the first guest in the shelter, James picked up his guitar and improvised a song for the kitten. The singing held the lingering shadows of the past, but also revealed a sense of relief toward a new beginning. After all, not long ago, he didn't even have a place to shelter from the wind and rain. A week ago, James was still a homeless wanderer. The outside world is always full of various temptations. Like the drug addicts he often hung out with, they would tempt you to fall back into the abyss. Want some? Facing the temptation offered by an old friend, and recalling all his own failures in reality, an urge to escape reality surged within James. But when James woke up again, he was already lying in the hospital. And Val, the doctor in charge of his rehabilitation, had just arrived. Her eyes were full of exhaustion and disappointment, because a scene like this had happened more than once. I'm sorry. Really, I messed up again. I've heard these words more than 20 times. Say something else. Val sternly informed James that this time he had fallen into a deep coma due to the amount he consumed. In the morning, his friend left him behind and ran away alone. Fortunately, a kind driver took him to the hospital. The reason Val didn't give up on James was that she noticed this person who couldn't even afford a meal had never sold his guitar. This guitar's last line of defense. It represented hope that had not been extinguished. It made Val willing to believe that James was still kind at heart. However, she also knew that if James continued to wander the streets, the determination to quit drugs would be worn away. To succeed in quitting drugs, first, one needs a foundation. For this, Val even risked her own career, making an exception to vouch for James's application for a shelter. No. I won't clear a spot for a drug addict. He is also in the program. He stopped taking the medication, he's out, that's it. He won't do it again. I hope so. With Val's tireless efforts, the shelter for James was finally approved. This was not just a roof to shelter from the wind and rain, but also, in James's gray life, the first ray of light called hope. Val, no need to thank me. Oh, I left some cereal in the kitchen, and there's milk in the fridge. I don't know what to say. Just say you'll stay in the rehab program. I swear, or I'll die. Okay. After the song ended, James also recovered from his memories. He said goodnight to the kitten and walked back to his room on his own. But the kitten followed closely behind. It jumped onto the bed and lay down peacefully. And on this night, the person and the cat kept each other company just like that. Although the world outside the window remained cold, the two lonely souls inside the house felt a long-lost warmth and peace for the first time. Early the next morning, James went door to door in the neighborhood asking around. But in the end, no one claimed this cute little cat. I have an orange cat here. Is anyone looking for it? Hello. Only then did James begin to realize this was a rescue area, where everyone living here was just as hungry as he was. How could anyone have the energy to raise a kitten? But James knew he was no different from these people, so he could only suppress his sympathy, and decided to release the kitten back into nature. Go on. Someone will come looking for you.
Welcome to the Shin Music Channel. Enjoy the
After sending the kitten away, James went to the station to busk as usual. But he did not notice his father, whom he hadn't been in contact with for a long time, walking by at the end of the street. But seeing James's down-and-out appearance, his father ultimately chose not to come forward and acknowledge him. Meanwhile, James was also being driven away by the station manager. Just as he was helplessly preparing to leave, he saw his father walking away in a hurry ahead. Hi, Dad. What are you doing here? Oh, we are shopping, just buying some things. But before the father and son could say much, the stepmother appeared at an inopportune moment. Dear, we're going to be late. I'm sorry, we have to. Actually, we were just chatting about Christmas. It's a pity our table is full, so. But there's always room for one more at Christmas, right? Dear, don't you think it might be okay if there was one more person? How, in our home? We still have children at home. What are you trying to say? In the stepmother's eyes, James's existence was like a contagious disease. Let alone Christmas dinner. And facing his son's past, the father was also caught in the middle, torn between the two. But before leaving, he stuffed a banknote into James's hand. Let's talk at New Year's, okay? At this moment, the banknote was tightly clutched in James's palm. So in his father's eyes, he was only worth being dismissed with money. He couldn't even get a simple take care. But when James dragged his exhausted body back to the neighborhood, a familiar meow suddenly sounded again. The kitten seemed to have been waiting specifically for him. And James noticed that the kitten had a few more wounds on its body. He immediately took off his own coat. Gently hold the cat in arms. Gently wrap the cat and hold it in arms. Then hurry to find someone for help. Excuse me, do you know whose cat this is? Wait, I have an injured cat here. Fortunately, a kind neighbor reached out to help. The girl's name is Betty. Her relief housing is decorated warmly and exquisitely. It looks completely out of place with the surrounding poverty. After Betty's examination, it was discovered that the kitten must go to the hospital for treatment. It needs to see a vet. That sounds expensive. Are you willing to measure its life of money? I don't know, it's not my cat. I mean, I just found it, I think. It might be a stray cat, or I don't know. Alright. It is telling me that it is here to keep you company. Seeing that James is not very well off, Betty also recommended a charity animal hospital to him. But what's even more amazing is, Betty also told James the kitten's name is Bob. Bob? It told me it wants you to call it that name. Alright then. It's really not my cat, you know. No, mine, yours, we belong to each other. Goodbye, Bob. From this moment on, the kitten had its own name. And James immediately held it and rushed to the animal hospital. But the hospital was crowded with animals waiting for treatment. After James took a number, he fell into a long wait. He missed the golden hour for busking during the evening rush. And also delayed the follow-up appointment with Val. And after Bob finally finished the treatment, the doctor told him that Bob still needed medication for recovery. But when James arrived at the payment window, the breath he just let out was instantly held back again. Because although the treatment was free, the cost of the medicine was suffocatingly high. James took out the tips he earned from busking these past few days. But it was far from enough. This is all the money I have. Please, just do it for the sake of the cat. Looking at the disdainful look from the front desk, he had no choice but to take out the banknote his father gave him. This is my food money for next week. If you want to buy it, buy it. Looking at Bob's weak and helpless appearance in his arms, James softened and bought the medicine anyway. But the real challenge only began after returning home. With no experience at all, he had no idea how to feed the kitten medicine. After several attempts, not only did he fail to feed the medicine, but he also almost got his hand bitten by the startled Bob. Oi, no, Bob. Bob. There was no other way. He had to take Bob to find Betty for help again. But, unexpectedly, Bob became exceptionally docile as soon as it was in Betty's arms. Betty just whispered a few words in its ear, and Bob obediently swallowed the pill. And using taking care of Bob as a topic, the two gradually opened up to each other. James couldn't help but ask why she lived in the relief area. But Betty didn't answer directly, only saying that she hated drug addicts the most. And there are many such people here. Maybe they were the ones who hurt Bob.
Welcome to the
So, what about you? How did you end up here? I am a musician. I can write songs and play instruments. Really? Yeah, I haven't found an agency yet. But I just moved here. It's a good start. Betty's remark about hating drug addicts. He worried that the trust and affection just beginning to bloom would instantly collapse because of his past. So this conversation also ended abruptly due to James's guilty conscience. The next day, James went to see Val for a follow-up visit. He told her about finding Bob and meeting Betty. Val noticed his feelings for Betty, but she didn't blindly encourage James. Because for someone recovering from addiction, take it slow, James. You are not ready to commit to a relationship yet. James understood Val's concerns, but because he lived in a relief area, he was kept incredibly close to the abyss. There were even people selling that harmful stuff right outside his window. They were like the devil's whispers passing through the room, constantly tugging at James's sensitive nerves. Fortunately, he had Bob's company, which helped him distract himself from those strange thoughts. A few days later, Bob's injuries had healed, but the supplies Val gave him were running low. He had to pick up his guitar and go back to the streets to busk. But Bob persistently followed behind him. James felt conflicted inside. But after much hesitation, he decided to release Bob in the park. Watching the small figure gradually move away, James felt a deep sense of reluctance. He felt like he was all alone again. But when he boarded the bus to the city center, Bob quietly jumped onto the bus. Amidst the surprised exclamations of the passengers on the lower deck, it looked around curiously, then nimbly ran up to the second floor, and jumped precisely into James's arms. How did you get here? Don't go over there. It's not actually my cat, it just followed me onto the bus. I love you too, okay? James suddenly understood. It wasn't that he chose Bob, but that Bob chose him. Two souls that had once drifted without a home seemed to have found a place to belong at this moment. After getting off the bus, James even used his shoelaces to make a simple leash. And this little leash. When they arrived at the city center, it was eager to explore the new world. No matter how hard James pulled the leash, could not hold back its restless heart. Just as James was feeling a bit helpless, a brilliant idea suddenly flashed through his mind. How about this? Why don't you jump up? No time to waste, hurry up. Great. Is it more comfortable sitting up there? Just like that, the unique duo of a man and a cat made their debut in the bustling city centre of London. Along the way, passers-by kept complimenting Bob. Many people even raised their phones to take pictures. Before they even reached the street corner to busk, they had already become the center of attention. Even the children couldn't resist Bob's charm. Mom, look, he's so cute. Look at that cat. Hello. Say hello quickly. We are about to perform right over there. If you want to come and see. Do you want to go see? Sure. Well done, you're enjoying it too, right? This sudden attention made James, who had been ignored for so long, feel the warmth of being accepted by people for the first time. And during the subsequent busking, Bob showed a magical money-attracting quality,
Welcome to the Shin Music
attracting more and more passers-by to stop and watch. It felt more like a small, private concert. Whenever a passerby threw in a tip, Bob would always gently lower his head and gaze sincerely at the person with his eyes, as if conveying his inner gratitude. By the evening, James finished work and started counting his earnings. Unsurprisingly, their earnings today far exceeded the past. You have such a cute ginger cat. Yes. The ginger cat I used to have looked just like that. I cared for it with all my heart. It had its own mind. That's what makes them unique. You have a partner who will be with you for life. They are more loyal friends than humans. Believe me.
to the Shin Music Channel.
The old woman's words
Vibes.
made James even more convinced that Bob was a gift from fate. But what James didn't know was that his former drug-using friend Baz was hiding in the corner watching all of this. As night fell, James had a long-awaited, hearty dinner. He even specially bought a new leash for Bob. This was not just for Bob's safety, but more like a solemn promise, symbolizing their new life of relying on each other. But life always seems to hide unexpected tests. The next day, just as James was about to go out to work, a familiar figure was already blocking his path. I just wanted to see an old friend. I think you could let me stay for a while. We share our blessings, right? Hello, little cat. Hey. Go away, okay, Baz? I'm serious. Please, anything will do. Life hasn't been easy lately. Old friend, how hard. And James looked. In the end, he felt compassion. He took out some money. And repeatedly told his friend that this would be used for food. Please, Baz, buy something to eat, okay? I promise to buy food. Okay. And don't come back again, okay? But an addict's promise cannot be trusted at all. This kind of assistance is destined to become his nightmare in the future. It's just that James hadn't realized this yet. He thought life was heading in a good direction since Bob came to his side. James hadn't faced the discrimination he used to, and finally let him experience the beauty of being a normal person. And after finishing a busy day, James specifically went to the store, wanting to thank Bob in the most practical way. Good. Not bad. Salmon, tuna, sardines. Is that enough? Okay. While checking out, James also carefully picked out a bouquet of flowers, wanting to give them to Betty as a gift. But just as he returned to the neighborhood, a figure collapsed in the corner made him pause. One collapsed in a corner. James walked closer to take a look, and found it was indeed his old friend Baz. And not far away, a cold syringe lay scattered. James instantly understood what had happened. Baz, are you okay? Wake up, can you hear me? Baz, wake up. Can someone help call an ambulance? Betty heard the shouting outside. She rushed out to help with the rescue. But it was all in vain. Baz had already left this world. Until the ambulance, former old friend left. James still couldn't snap out of it for a long time. And during this long night, Betty also confessed the reason why she hated addicts. Her favorite brother passed away due to a drug overdose. This pain made it impossible for her to forgive anyone involved with drugs. But she couldn't let go of the longing for her brother. So she moved here, to the place where her brother used to live. He tried, but it was too hard to quit completely. But I guess he didn't want to quit that much yet. Or he really wanted to. But he couldn't do it. Even for my sake. Betty's words were like an alarm bell, making James even more determined to quit drugs. The next day, he hurriedly went to find Dr. Val. He told the bad news of his friend Baz's passing, and confessed his determination to quit drugs. But Val patiently explained, quitting drugs is not something that happens overnight. It's more like a battle that requires patience and strategy. She suggested a dosage plan for James, to let the body gradually adapt until he can completely break free from the dependency. For this doctor who had always taken care of him, James also obediently listened to this advice.
Enjoy the vibes.
Time soon arrived at Christmas. On that warm afternoon, James and Betty met for lunch. He also bought a bracelet for Betty. And Betty thoughtfully prepared a doll for Bob, as well as a Christmas card. Dear James and little Bob, Merry Catmoss. Lots of purrs and whiskers, from Betty. Catmoss? It's nice, right? Thank you. Betty also shared some of the work from before with James. And in response, James picked up his guitar and sang softly for Betty. These fragments of life and love made their relationship warm up quickly through their interactions. When they went outside with their teacups, a young couple was kissing not far away. And Betty had a question about this. Have you ever wondered why people kiss with their lips? Why not rub ears together like?
Welcome to the Shin Music Channel.
I want to hear your thoughts.
Enjoy the vibes.
Or use wrists like this? Their wrists gently overlapped. The warm touch silently conveyed their feelings for each other. At this moment, no verbal confirmation was needed. Their relationship had quietly entered a new chapter. By nightfall, James boarded the bus to his father's house. The carriage was full of holiday noise, which only made him feel more lonely. When James finally arrived at his father's house, he saw his two sisters playing inside through the window. But he felt no jealousy at all. Instead, he felt relieved that they could have a happy childhood. He carefully hid Bob and then went up to ring the doorbell. But the moment the door opened, the smile on his father's face suddenly froze. It seemed he hadn't expected James to actually come. But James was already standing there. His father had to offer a somewhat stiff welcome. But as soon as James walked into the living room, before he could even greet his sisters, those harsh words were thrown at him. Mommy doesn't like you. Mommy says you're a junkie. You can't stay here, we have guests coming. Leave quickly, Mommy will be down in a moment. I thought you said it was okay for me to come over for New Year's. I said maybe it was fine, but you should have called first. He's a junkie, he's a junkie. Leave that tree alone. Actually, I am recovering from drug addiction. The noisy environment scared Bob, and he broke free from his arms. But one of the sisters had a severe cat allergy. Her scream instantly ignited the chaos, and the stepmother came down from upstairs to check the situation. But when her gaze landed on James, the expression on her face instantly turned gloomy. What is he doing here? Faith. Mommy, he brought a cat. But she's allergic to cat hair. I know. Bob. James tried to soothe the frightened Bob. But in the midst of the chaos, Bob knocked over the stepmother's favorite vase, and also knocked down the Christmas tree covered in starlights. The originally warm Christmas Eve instantly became a mess. Facing this unmanageable situation, James also realized he shouldn't have come. So after comforting Bob, he prepared to leave. Happy New Year, Dad. James just held the frightened Bob like this, and walked out of his father's house step by step. There was not a single word of persuasion to stay behind him. New Year's fireworks were still blooming in the distance. But his world was only bone-chillingly cold. It turned out he was never part of this home. The next day, busking on the street. He originally thought he had successfully quit drugs and returned to a normal life. A large dog broke this peace. A large dog quietly approaching broke this peace. James subconsciously protected Bob behind him and hoped the dog owner would restrain their pet. But he didn't expect that the dog owner, in full view of everyone, would let the large dog urinate on his backpack. Get lost, you jerk. Looks like you're the one who wants to get lost, right? Pull that dog away, I'm performing here. Watching this humiliating scene, passers-by also began to condemn the man's barbaric behavior. But the heated argument escalated into a physical altercation. The square was immediately plunged into chaos. James had no intention of joining the fight, he just wanted to protect Bob. Until the police arrived and the fight was forcibly terminated. But although surveillance footage later proved James didn't start it, he was still punished with a ban from street busking. But James couldn't care about that right now. He just wanted to know where Bob was. Val understood James's anxiety, but still urged James to calm down first. His emotional fluctuations had been too intense these past few days. The priority is to take the medication. Because Val was very afraid that these successive events would crush James's willpower again.
Enjoy the vibes.
You go straight to the pharmacy. I'll go pick up Bob, okay? James hurried to the pharmacy again. After briefly explaining the situation to the doctor, he mechanically took the medication and swallowed it. But to James's surprise, Betty happened to see this scene from behind him. She didn't question him loudly or argue fiercely. There was only shock and disappointment, then she turned and left resolutely. He quickly chased after her. You're a junkie, you lied to me. No, I didn't lie, I just withheld part of the truth. Oh, give it a rest. Wait a minute. James explained to Betty anxiously. He said he had been clean from drugs for a long time. The reason he chose to hide it before was the fear that once she knew the truth, she would leave him quickly like everyone else. However, Betty could never forgive this deception, because she had heard similar words from her lullaby before.
Welcome to the Shin Music Channel. Enjoy the vibes.
But in the end, it only took his life. So the relationship that had just begun between them also began to crumble at this moment. By evening, after James picked up Bob, he sat alone in the dim room, thinking. Being banned from busking for 6 months was equivalent to cutting off his only source of income. And recalling Betty's disappointed look made his heart ache even more. But this time, James did not run from reality, nor did he choose to give up on himself. The next morning, he took Bob to a magazine office, deciding to get through the hard times by selling magazines. The threshold for this job was very low, and James was successfully hired. You can't take photos with an animal. This is your work ID. What animal? I don't see any animal. This is my work partner. I've heard a little about it. Alright then. Look over here. Say cheese, Bob. However, what was gratifying was that, even after changing the way of making a living, passers-by would still stop for Bob. Busy office workers couldn't help but take out their phones to take pictures. And everyone who approached almost always bought a magazine. During this process, a reporter was also moved by their story. And this seemingly ordinary photo would change James's life. But for now, fate didn't seem ready to let James off the hook. That day, a mother and son came specifically for them. They even helped him by buying a magazine. She promised to provide a better living environment and tastier cat food, and emphasized that her son loved Bob very much. But Bob was the light that led him out of the abyss. James, of course, his partner was insulted. He immediately retaliated. I don't want your money. How about how much your child is worth? Perhaps I can make a deal with you. Of course, I will give him a proper home. You have a lot of nerve, that is extremely rude. Bob. The surrounding noise and the barking of a large dog nearby triggered Bob's stress response again. It instinctively rushed into the busy traffic. James tried to stop it. But in the end, he couldn't catch up. Only at this moment did James realize how big this city was. He asked every passerby and searched every possible corner carefully. He searched from day until night, but there was still no sign of Bob. And at this moment, James was about to lose his only light. What if that dog caught him, or a car ran over him, or... I can't help it. It's been 2 nights, you know? James told Val. But Val suggested that he shouldn't be alone lately, because being alone on the verge of an emotional breakdown would severely weaken the self-control he had struggled to build. At the same time, he told James to be prepared. But this time, James did not listen to Val's advice. I have to go home. I have to wait for it at home. Maybe it will come back. I really need to find someone to stay with you. It might come home, right? It might, oh yes. It might have come home, right? James? In the following days, James kept himself locked in the shelter. The empty room was terrifyingly quiet. Every corner seemed to have traces of Bob, and an indescribable emptiness surged like a tide, constantly gnawing at his already fragile willpower. Finally, that night, James could no longer control himself. He wanted to forget all his troubles, so he aimlessly sought out the bad people in the community. Are you looking for paradise? Because I'm free all day. White, brown, whatever you want, I have it. He was almost about to say what he wanted. But suddenly, the image of Bob lying beside him flashed through his mind. At the moment before falling into the abyss of depravity, James woke up just in time. I want my cat. I'm looking for an orange cat. Have you seen it anywhere? Looking at the other person's fierce eyes, James had no choice but to turn around and return home. But the moment he stepped into the house, a strange premonition quietly emerged.
Welcome to the Shin Music channel. Enjoy the vibes.
Bob. Hey, Mr. Cat. Where have you been? Where did you go? Oh, Bob. Perhaps fate rewarded him for not making the wrong choice, which is why Bob returned to his side. But after experiencing this loss and recovery, James decided that even if it was just for Bob, he would stay sober from now on. So the next morning, James went to find Val. He firmly expressed his determination to stop taking the medication, but Val did not encourage him. Because the pain of withdrawal would be 100 times worse than that. Every moment, he would need to fight against the cravings of his will. However, as long as he could persist through the most critical week, there would be hope for a turning point in both body and mind. But according to Val's judgment, James might not be able to withstand this test. One day we were selling magazines outside. A person walked towards us, dressed very well. I used to think that such a person would not be willing to walk on the same sidewalk as me. But he called me sir. Sir, would you mind if I took a photo of you? No one had ever called me sir before. This is all because of Bob. It showed me what life could be like. Another kind of beauty. Seeing James's firm belief, Val agreed to his plan to stop the medication. Then James gathered his courage and found Betty. He sincerely apologized for his past concealment and revealed to her his plan to stop the medication. Betty had always been able to feel his determination, but James told Betty to rest assured with a firm tone, because this time he would not be fighting alone. He still had Bob by his side. It will take care of me. After making all the preparations, James locked himself in his room and began the battle with his own will. At the beginning, He could still rely on playing the guitar to strengthen his will. But the subsequent withdrawal symptoms were far from comparable to internet or alcohol addiction. It was not just the entanglement of mental addiction, but a tsunami sweeping through on a physiological level. James felt like a bicycle with failed brakes, crashing wildly on a downhill road. His legs were cramping so much they couldn't stretch, and he could only vomit, repeatedly cycling between hallucinations and endless nausea. James thought about giving up countless times, because the pain caused by drug addiction was truly too agonizing. But every time he saw Bob lying quietly beside him, he would remember when he was abandoned by the whole world. It was this cat that gave him warmth. He was not quitting drugs for others, but to hold on to this hard-won love, and also to hold on to his last bit of dignity. The morning after a week, James woke up from his sleep. Sunlight shone through the window into the room, and he felt exceptionally warm and bright. James took Bob and walked out of the house together. He looked up and felt the sunlight, and a long-lost peace appeared on his face. James first went to find Val, and Val was also proud of the victory he had achieved, and warmly gave James a hug. This hug was full of understanding, recognition, and blessings for the future. Remember to take care of yourself. You too. Thank you, Val. The second person James wanted to share with was Betty. But when he arrived at Betty's door, he found that she seemed to be moving out. Are you moving out? Yes. Going home for a while. Oh. I can't stay here forever.
Welcome to the Shin Music Channel.
This is not my life.
Enjoy the vibes.
This belongs to my brother, and it's time for me to let go. Betty offered James her most sincere gratitude, because it was his appearance and change that allowed her to walk out of the shadow left by her brother. But James worried in his heart that this goodbye would be their last. However, before they parted ways, Betty gave James a handmade bracelet. She also left her address and phone number, and welcomed James to visit her anytime. Say hello to Bob for me. I will. Good luck. Yeah, good luck to you too. Goodbye. Goodbye. After saying goodbye to Betty, James went to his father's house. He had no other requests. He just wanted to tell his father in person that he had overcome his addiction, and sincerely apologize for the lost years. After hearing his words, tears of relief welled up in his father's eyes.
Welcome to the Shin
With trembling
Music
hands,
Channel.
he took from his wallet
Enjoy the vibes.
a photo yellowed by time. It was James's innocent smiling face from childhood, and it was the concern his father had cherished for many years. I never gave up on you. I was just ashamed. I just didn't know how. I just didn't know how to be your father. I am the one who should apologize. Jack, what are you doing outside? I'm talking to my son. And my grandson, Bob. It turned out he had never been forgotten by his father. And in this moment, the regrets James had with his original family were finally reconciled. The turning point of fate always arrives unexpectedly. During this time for James, a fan who often watched him perform turned out to be the editor-in-chief of a publishing house. She found a way to contact James after his seclusion and hoped to publish his story as a book. She believed that this true story about loss, companionship, and self-redemption would surely illuminate more people who are in trouble and need hope. And when James heard that he could help people with similar experiences, he agreed without hesitation. It looks like he wants to start writing. Just like that, James returned to the house and began his seclusion again. But unlike last time, this time he is fighting for the gentleman. This time he is fighting for the gentleman. But at the beginning, the writing process did not go smoothly. Fortunately, Bob was always by his side. After countless days and nights, A Street Cat Named Bob was successfully completed in the winter of 2012. And unsurprisingly, it quickly became a global sensation. At the book signing, The readers in front of the bookstore formed a long line that stretched to the end of the street. And James never thought he could really succeed. And James's success. But when he saw the story move them, or when he could find hope, James suddenly realized that Bob had not only saved him, but also made him a light in the eyes of others. It turns out that true redemption is to first illuminate yourself and then warm others. But just as James was preparing to go on stage with Bob, a familiar voice suddenly sounded from behind. "Betty, I am very proud of you." "Hello there. Thank you for coming." "James?" James, The events of the past seemed to flood back into his mind. And it wasn't just Betty. There was also Val and his father's family. Even the elderly fan from before came to the scene. Amidst the warm applause and flashing lights, the new book signing ceremony officially began. And the most unexpected thing was, a mysterious guest actually asked him for an autograph. "Do you like it?" "It feels as if I experienced every moment myself." "Not bad, good." This person is the real-life James. And the process of mutual redemption between him and Bob in reality is far more moving than the movie plot. And it is worth mentioning that the Bob in the movie did not use a stunt cat, but was played by Bob himself. Even after the movie was released, Bob remained just as he was in the film, often perched on James's shoulder. The two of them, one man and one cat, continued to walk the streets of London and used their growing influence to actively call for social attention to the plight of the homeless and the significance of animal protection. And they truly achieved it. You helped me walk out of the darkness, and I will accompany you to light up the world. If you are currently in a low point in your life, please do not give up. Just like James and Bob, it is not that you are not good enough. It is just that you haven't waited for the light that will pull you up yet. And this light might be waiting for you around the corner. You deserve to be loved, and you deserve a better life and future.